Hi, welcome to Tech Ranch, a place where we learn and earn technical skills in the most efficient way. Let's make coding fun. HTML tutorial. Chapter 2, HTML input form tag. So in this session we'll see about HTML tag, HTML input tag, select tag, form tag, example and demonstration. Basically we are going to cover when we create a form, how and what all types of different input you can get it from the user. Now let's take a look. We have discussed about HTML page design so far in the last session, where we can have a header file, footer file, navigation side, body side and menu side. So these all are different type of pages which we are going to put it in one together. Now inside that, first take a look at the body side. This is the place where we are going to put our content with the help of the HTML tags. Now, when we say body, this is header, this is footer, and here is navigation, and this side we have to fill it up with our content, which comes under the body tag. So whatever you are going to write it inside the body tag is going to display in the browser in the body part. So this is what the test.html, a sample test.html, and where you can write it down all your content. So this is what we have learned in the last session. Now let's take a look at different type of input types you get it from the user. This is what one of the tag is called input tag. The input tag specifies an input field where the user can enter the data. These input elements are used within a form element to declare input controls that allow users to input the data. An input field can vary in many ways depending on the type of attribute. Now to understand it in the simple words, all you can say that when you registered yourself in Google or Yahoo or any kind of Rediff mail or any site, they will ask you your first name, your last name, your email address, your preferred password, or your gender, your choices, and many questions they will ask you in the different form of input. Now these are called input types. These input types can be implemented with the help of input tag in HTML. One of them is called checkbox. You can see here the gender. This is the most commonly used type of input where we can have multiple choice, but you will have to choose only one out of it. So suppose you have on and off or true, false. Some places you have an online exam tool where you can have multiple choice questions. You have to select one answer. That's the place we use radio buttons. So this is called radio buttons. Mostly we use it during the gender questions. So male or female. So this is one of the type of input. Another type is checkbox. Now checkbox can be used when you have multiple choice and you can have multiple options. Now the difference is option and choice means I have a bike, I have a car, I have a bicycle, or I have a rocket, or I have aeroplane. You can put all these choices, but that doesn't mean that you only have a bike or you can only have a car. You can have a bike, you can have a car. So multiple choice with multiple answers or options. That's the place where we use checkbox. Text box, first name, last name. It's simple string which we are going to insert it inside the text box and passing it to the next page or next site or for filling up the form. It's something like you're filling it in an application form over the net. Now button is a type where we confirm the server that we are accepting all kinds of terms and conditions, and some type of signature. You are verifying yourself and confirming that I have inserted all my information over the form and it is ready to submit. So this is perfect example to understand that you are going to have an exam application form and you will be given terms and condition or any kind of agreement or any kind of confirmation that yes, I have inserted all my incorrect information and going to confirm my submission. So this is what the basic example to understand is exam application form. Now, form tag is basically for the destination of your application has to submit. Now, when you go to a college application form, you fill it up over the form and you submit that form in an office. So, form is basically your filling up the information in the form and passing it to the office. So, next page or destination or a target page after filling it up has to be defined in the form. You will see more and understand it and later when we actually see the examples. Now let's take a look at the example of text box. Now as we have discussed in that input types has to be defined within the form tag. So make sure whenever you have any input type, you fill it up and make it and wrap it within the form tag. So you can see here, this is the form tag. Inside this form tag, we have a first name and the last name. It's just a string. Next step, we need to define the input tag. Input tag has attributes. One of them is called type. This type will show you what type of input you are going to have it in your form. Name is basically you identifying your text box with a particular variable or tagging it. First name. It also has ID and value that you can define it. It is as per the requirement. So in the simple, you just need to mention the type and the name. That's the basic thing to define it in the input type, because type will define the HTML browser that what type of input the user is going to insert. Now another thing is what interesting, so see here, input type is called password. When user being asked to mention any specific password, we have to make sure it is confidential. So we are not going to show the characters. So they will have different types of characters, special characters we use to hide your password while entering. So this is another type of input. Another type of input, we have emails. Email, and when you add it multiple, this will provide user to insert number of or more than one email address. Now this particular type of email is introduced in HTML5, and here the best part is what you can actually insert the exact and validated email address. If you will not have your special characters like dot or @ it will not let you insert. It will give you the alert message that the email address is not correct. Now another type of input is here, you can see is called range. This is also introducing in HTML5 version. Here this particular input type will help you to give you the slider. The range means slider. Now this slider has many type of attributes. One of them is called max and minimum. This is what the range basically of the slider. Instead of inserting any numbers from the user, all user can simply range and slide it and get the value. The another attribute has called steps. When you move it, it will move it with the specific steps, like a difference of 2 or 5 or 10. So this is very interesting feature which is introducing HTML5. We'll see when we actually execute it. Another thing we have is called checkbox. We have discussed about it, like this will have number of options and you can choose more than one option out of it. It is only defined by mentioning the type of input. Just like radio button, text box, password, email address, range, we can have another type of attribute is called checkbox. Defining a checkbox will give you the checkbox here and will give you some values. You can mention it in value, and this will give you the IDs. So what will happen when you actually work in database? This ID will be processed and passing through the servlet or any other way and inserted into the database. So this is how it works. Now this is what the radio button. We have seen the radio button, or we need to make the type of input mentioned as in radio, and value, title, and name is XYZ. The another thing what you can do is like by default checked. So since radio button has to be a single checked button, single choice option, and you don't have to get the alert. So what HTML provides you to have a choice that make it as a by default for the programmer to make it checked by default. So it is up to you which one you want to check. It is not necessary, it is an optional, but prefer to have a checked already. You can change it. Now another interesting type of tag is called select. This is, I'm mentioning here in input because this is another type of input user can add it in his form. Is like select, and this will give you the drop down list. You can choose your choice. Suppose you are buying and doing it in an option, or suppose you are filling it up in application form and they ask you that which type of course, which type of device you wanted to book for your course or program. They will ask you the choice, and that time you can have these type of drop down list implemented in your form. So all you need to make changes is what select tag and option, and give the values and make a list out of it and make it in a by default the first one. Now the most important thing is form. You have created all type of input tags. Now all these tags, input tags, has to be wrapped within the form tag. Now form tag has so many attributes. One of them is called ID, which will be identified the form, and the test and the name, another type of identification for a form which is named as test, and the action attribute. You can see here this action attributes give you the target of your form where it has to submit it. And within this form, all you can just do simply fill up the input tags, and in the end you have to mention the input type submit. Now submit means if you say type is equals to submit, that means it's a button and the value will submit it in the tag. So this is about the input types form. Now let's take a look at the execution and see the demonstration. Today we have an example. It's called zigzag.com, a kind of online video gallery, and you have the registration form where we are going to fill up and asking from the user to insert the first name and the last name, selecting the gender, my theme, your choice and date of birth, theme color, my budget with the help of the range, email address and the password, and terms and condition agreement, and submit the form. Now let's take a look at the execution. So now let's take a look at the execution. First thing first, we have to have HTML, and you can have your head and title. Welcome to zigzag.com, something like that, and close the title tag and closing the head tag. Now let's start. The main part is what your body, and we have the H1 for registration form. It's like an application form. And once this is done, then let's start with your horizontal. You can have your header file and footer file and navigation. It's a different file. You can just include it. We'll see that when we actually work in an actual application form, actual page, web page. Now right now just concentrate on the input type of tags in a form, how we can build up a form and get the values from the user and put it in the input. So first thing, we need to have a form tag and give some IDs, test and name test for identification, and action, let's have a page home.html. That's where we have to give, like it's like an submitted the form into the office, right? So next, let's have a text file first, and this particular thing is for your range. We'll see that later. First let's put this one. I'll show you what is happening when we put the range. Range will select your values from one range to another range and return that value to the user based on that and calculate accordingly. So this, what is happening, that A value and the B value is going to add and process the completely in an output value. So you will see when we actually work in range. Range is what? The slider, where we are going to choose the number with the slider. Now first name and last name using text box. So input type text, and identify this tag by value first name. And it is up to you. If you want to have a value by default, you can have it first name. Enter your name, please, something like please enter your name, or anything, please enter name. So any message you can provide. So input tag will not have your closing tag, so we don't need to closing the text box. Next, we have to have the radio button for the gender. So let's ask gender and have the radio type of button. So all you need to have the type radio, and you can have the identification of these tags by saying gender or male or any other variable, specific variable. Let's keep it simple and common. So value male, and let's take an example with making it by default for female to make it different. And gender name, gender value female. Actually you need to have ID is different. When you actually work it in the database, you need to have a different value and different ID. And checked. So what will happen in this case now? And break. When you see instead of male, this time will be female, will be already checked by default. Next, your choice, my theme or my choice, whatever you can mention it. So this is for the checkbox example. So for checkbox, all you need to mention the checkbox and ID. Some just like that, you have to have your theme or vehicle or anything. Now since it will have a different answers and more than one answers, you have to make its identification different every time. Vehicle or anything, any choice, my theme, nature or wildlife photographer. Since it's an online video gallery, so you can have it different type of choices. Now in this case, since it is a conclusion of a particular input type in a checkbox, you need to close it to tell browser that this is kind of my input. Now it's up to you. If you want to have a new line, you can just put the BR for the new line, or you can continue your next input type. And if you have more than one choices, you can add more. Just simply copy paste and changes the ID and wildlife, or nature, underwater, and religious or spiritual or travel, motivational. So many choices you can add. Now once this is done, and you can copy this and make it simple, copy paste, change choices. Here nature, underwater, you see, like this. And so this is about the checkbox. Once the checkbox is done, next is your select tag, where we are going to have input, a select type of input. So for that you need to make your choice or your devices and have the select tag and add the option. What option do you need? Value equals anything, your choices, your favorite, any list. You can ask for it, like a DTV and simple DTV, and you need to close the option tag. Make sure, and now you can add more. Since it's a drop down list already structured, so you don't have to break it and do it again. I can just simply iPad and iPod or iPhone. So all you need to change the value, and the IDs will retrieve it from the variable iPhone. So you see, and once this is done, you need to close the select tag. Now once this is done, so this is your break done. Now you can add data, more data of the user using birth date. So this is one of the most common type of input used, is called calendar. So for calendar, which is introducing in HTML5 by saying date, this is by default object. All you need to just call input type date and give the identification by birthday or any variable, and this will make your interactive and fancy looking calendar. My theme color, if you want, this will give you the color picker. You can introduce it. This is also introduced in HTML5 input type. So some places what you can see, they have a different type of theme or colors that you can add, or images you can simply add here. So your favorite color, and simply pick some different, and by default you have to mention one color, so you can simply give some code, color code, and this will give you another color picker, just like a paint you have. Now my budget, here you will see interesting input type is called range. Range will work with the slider, which is very interesting. what you can do, you can just simply seek and slide the sleeker and get the value instead of writing manually from the user. So, and this will also controls by keyboard, so it's not like only mouse or any kind of other devices you need to use. And this is what we have defined it in the form tag. Some kind of attribute is on input, where the maximum value and the minimum value of your range of your slider is mentioned here. So this is equals to output tag, you can see. So output name value X for variable A space B. So these are the variables we define it in input, and getting it in the output tag for the range, and closing the output tag and break. Now once this is, you can have your input type password, type equals password, and value. So when you insert anything in this, it will be your, you can have another kind of attributes like ID, which is password, or name to process it dynamically. Now another, similarly you have email address, we have seen it. So input type equals email and email address, and all you need to just give values and name. And if you add multiple, that will possible to give you more than one email address, which is introduced in HTML version 5. So this will automatically check your validation of your and verified your email address. If you're not giving it text wise correctly, it will not check if it is a valid email address. It will check if it is text wise, it has all special characters at the right place. The major part of your email address composition will need it. All kind of special characters should be there in this type of input. Now once this is done, next we have our button, input type submit. Now here what you can add is on click some alert message, something like terms and condition, or that you can do it in button type of input. Button tag will give you an alert of something like this. If I'll show you that form, I agree with, it's basically used when we have any kind of terms and condition and you want user to confirm it that he checked the, so terms and conditions value, terms and conditions applied. So that places we use these type of tags. And once this is done, next step is simply submit application form. So here you can mention the message, form submitted successfully. This is not aligned and formatted properly. This form is just for understand how we can get the values from the user. And once that this is done, you have to make sure you close the form tag, the body tag, the HTML tag. Now let's save it as a form.html. Now we know it is an static HTML, so all you need to simply open it in a browser and see how it, and you can see choose your gender, your checkbox, your drop down list, and your date of birth, and color picker. You see your theme and your budget, your email address, and your password. You can see here in terms and conditions it says I agreed, and submit. Signed up successfully. So once this is sent, then it will submit. So this is about your registration form and different types of input you can ask from the user with the help of the HTML, a static web application. What you can do here is sign up HTML, welcome.html, header.html, and footer.html for a practice. Make an HTML sign up form and use input types and complete the sign up form. Welcome HTML, you include header and footer with navigation, hyperlink, and login block. Header HTML include the title, and footer HTML include the copyright reserved content. For more information and any kind of assistance and questions, please feel free to email and contact us on techranch2019@gmail.com. In the next session, so far we have learned about input form. Next session we'll see about hidden field, font, and styles more in detail. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more upcoming interesting videos. Let's make coding fun. Thank you.